Hello and welcome. I'm really honored tonight to be with my guest as part of our leadership series. As you know, we've been doing this for years. I have a leader every once in a while that is someone who stands out in Minnesota as a stellar leader of whatever field she's in. Well, this woman that's my guest tonight, she crosses a lot of paths. She's a leader in the field of leadership, in the field of diversity and training, in the field of racial equity, in the field of aging, death and dying. I could go on. Vivian Jenkins Nelsen is my guest, and she is someone who has done all these things. I guess I would just broadly call her a consultant and a really true leader. You'll identify, I think, her work with places like the Interracial Institute that she and her husband George Nelsen founded, with the Hypatia Group. I'll have her tell you about that later, and also with the Women's Whole Person Leadership Program, something she's working on probably the last 7 years about. Well, welcome, Vivian.
Well, thank you so much, Mary.
Oh, you're welcome. I always like to start out with one of my early questions for leaders and ask about who your mentor was, because mentors have a big role in life.
Well, you know, first of all, I don't consider myself a leader as much as an energized follower. Somebody's got to follow.
Well, I call you a leader, but
Okay,
maybe you're a leader follower.
Anyway, so I have to say my mom and dad were my first mentors because they gave me a real basis in ethics, right and wrong, good and bad. Also, race relations, because that was a place where they spent a lot of time. And also, one of my bosses when I was working at the Lutheran Church, national offices, Reverend Dr. Paul Hanson, who was so encouraging, where I was the only woman, the only black woman, the only black person, a lot of times.
Oh.
And
Did you feel lonely in that position? I mean, using the word lonely kind of generally.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I bet.
Yeah. And well, and I should throw in my husband, because he was always in my corner telling me, you can do this, you know, blah, blah. And my boss, Harlan Cleveland, who was ambassador to NATO, and then he was dean at the Humphrey.
I think a lot of people know that name, Harlan
Yes,
Cleveland.
Yeah, he was a good pal.
Your father was a Lutheran minister.
Not just a Lutheran minister, he was a Missouri Synod Lutheran pastor. Okay.
The more conservative
Oh, yes.
branch of the
Yes,
Lutheran Church.
Yes, absolutely.
And I heard you in an interview you did earlier say that he went from liberal to radical at one point in his ministry. And he was a colleague or friend of Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And I couldn't let that just be
Yes.
something in the past. I want to get a sort of brief
Okay.
update on how they work together.
Okay. Well, he was working as a professor and pastor at the only black school of the, you know, of the, I forget all the excuse me.
The acronym.
The acronyms, yes, for it, but the historically black colleges.
This is your father now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the Lutheran Church had only one school in that holy crew.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so he worked there, and my mother did too. And they were, their students actually were veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they couldn't use the veterans acts like housing and education to go where they wanted to go, then that sparked the movement. And Dr. King was down, I think he was in Montgomery at the time. I was a little kid. And so they wanted to invite him up because he already had a name. Because by this time, Rosa Parks had already done her number.
So about what year would this have been?
Oh, I'm guessing it'd have to have been in the mid-50s, something like that. And so the students wanted to invite him to Selma, and that's how he came to Selma. And then my dad left under, shall we say, not the most wonderful conditions. They sent the sheriff out to tell him never to come back.
Oh, wow.
Or they'd throw him up under the jail and throw away the key. I was sitting in the front seat, so I heard all of this, and it stayed with me, yes. So as we were tossed out over the bridge, I should say that Dad and Mom were missionaries, so the church could send them anywhere. So they sent him north.
Well, you mentioned George, your husband, as another mentor.
Yes.
And he was called, I read, Mr. Housing in Minneapolis, and quite a man. And you two founded the Institute, Racism Institute. Can you just define that for us?
Sure. Interrace was a place to do academic research, to bring people together, and basically to try to move the field forward. So that was...
So a lofty, big goal.
Yeah, you could say that.
And working together, was that a challenge, or did you meld your strengths?
Well, we had started Nelsen and Nelsen together, so we had, got our disagreements out early. So that was a consulting firm we had before starting Interrace.
Yeah, it's sometimes an art and a science, I guess you might say, when you work with someone you live with and know so well. In terms of bringing people together, which has been one of your goals forever and ever, our country and our world right now is more partisan, more divided than I think most of us, have ever seen it.
Yeah.
What is your take on the future in terms of getting more of a unified world again?
Well, if we don't start talking to each other so that we can get to understanding each other, I think the future is very dicey.
Like people are not willing to compromise right now, are really having strong negative feelings about whoever's on the other side of whatever the issue.
Yeah, and also talk civilly to each other.
Right, right.
And the League of Women Voters, of which I'm a great fan, has done work on civil conversation. Yeah.
You wouldn't think that as adults we would need to be taught to talk nice to each other. I mean, don't we learn that in kindergarten?
Yeah, there's a good book on that. Yeah.
So how do we get people, Vivian, to talk with authenticity and honesty and politeness?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be the work now, not just of organizations like mine or like that, but systems that have been, talking to themselves, like corporate organizations, to reach out now into communities and share their resources, share their ability to train facilitators, share their tables, if you will.
You have been a consultant to some of the Fortune 500 companies.
Yes.
Do you think they are willing and wanting to do this kind of leading as organizations or companies?
I think most of them are. We haven't asked them, so why don't we see. We haven't asked them, so why don't we see?
That's a good point. That is a very good point. I read that your Hypatia group, a consulting group,
Yes.
looks at organizations in terms of their strengths. And I'd never quite thought of organizations in the strength-related way. You know, I think of leaders with certain strengths, but not organizations. Can you give us an example of a strong trait of a good major company?
Sure. One of the strengths of major companies is that it tells the truth. It tells
Very
the
important.
truth to its clients. It tells the truth to its employees. And it is first in line when there's a crisis to tell the truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's another strength of
Well,
a good organization?
another good strength of a good organization is the ability to, how to say this, the ability to do what it says it can do and deliver on that.
So to set realistic goals,
Yes.
doable goals.
Doable goals, yeah. And also, it's competence. Can you do what you say you can do? So it's being able to deliver on projects. It's also the ability to tell the truth about your projects and services, I should say. But it's also, in my mind, it's also the ability to use time in a very special way. So when you see something coming, can you make the organization move swiftly enough to deal with it?
So anticipating and then
Yes,
getting new strategies moving.
exactly.
You've done a lot of consulting, you know, as I've shared with you, and I've wondered how you kind of have managed your goals and your time. She's written 11 books. She's done all this consulting, teaching. 3 presidents have honored you for various things you've done in the world of race and diversity. So do you feel that you've got some secrets in terms of managing all the things you do?
No.
Or
No. And I took an expensive course in time management. I'm not very good at it. But I wanted to say this, that the 11 books that I wrote have been mostly written for clients. And so you won't see them on regular book searches, but they're there anyway.
have you liked the writing? Because I think it's harder than people realize
Oh, it's
to
way harder.
write something for publication.
It's way
Yeah,
harder.
it's hard work.
Yes, and working with corporations got me to write a little book called The Diversity Dictionary, which was for publication. And it was really funny. The first media that I had on it, the interviewer asked me, "So who made you the cop of race relations?" I was
Wow.
like, "Ooh,
That was a good
that's
question.
a good question."
Yeah.
But anyway, so nobody made me the cop. Is the answer.
Interesting. The book that I've read that you've written that had the most maybe attention was the book on death and dying
Yeah.
and grieving
Yes.
and looking at it from different cultural perspectives. When did you write that, Vivian, and what led you to write it?
You know, I'm trying to remember here the year. It seems to me that it was probably in the, I want to say mid-90s, but I can't remember. But
Okay,
anyway,
but it's
long
a
and
while
short.
back. Yeah.
What made us write it was, and there were 2 other partners who were editors with me, what made us write it was that there was a new course and department at the U, and all the social work and counseling grad students were expected to take it at the time, and at the same summer there was a conference to introduce this new thing, and I went to both, and my friend who had been, we were friends at Hamlin, and he said, I think we need to do something about this. And my brother had died not too much earlier, my younger brother James, and so I was still very much
In the grieving mode,
in the
I bet,
grieving
yeah.
mode, yeah. So I said, okay, let's do it, and that's how we did it. And so we invited people that we knew who could write and would write from their perspectives.
So from
Like,
several different cultures.
Yes,
then.
like Hmong, and like Native American, or like Indigenous, and like Latinx, so forth. So, yeah.
Interesting. Were you surprised at how big a book it became in terms of?
Stunned.
Oh, interesting. yeah.
Stunned. I just joined the academic society that counts those kinds of things. So, yeah.
When we talk about leadership in general, I always like to ask 2 major questions. One, what's been the biggest challenge for you as a leader, even if you maybe think you're not? And then 2, what do you think has made you successful as a leader, or 1 or 2 traits maybe?
Okay, that's a big question.
That's a big question. We could talk for hours on that.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing, the challenges.
Right, the biggest challenge.
The biggest challenge has been very interior ones that no one would ever see if I didn't tell them.
Okay.
Which is like having secretaries tell you that they're not going to work for you when you first come on the job. I had that happen
Some
twice.
personnel kind of things that were
And,
tricky.
you know, I'm going to work for my other boss, not you. I'm like, wait, what? You know,
Yeah.
so, and then having a more senior person who was supposed to report to me say that she was going to continue to report to her boss, and you know, and she had the very bad. I don't know. She had how to put this. She had the very bad decision-making idea to write it to me.
Oh.
So I just took it and went in and handed it to my director, who read it and said, "Oh no, she shouldn't have written that." But the way he said it didn't make me secure in whether or not he really felt that she shouldn't have written that to me.
What did you attribute that kind of rebellion or problem to? Did you take it personally, or did you think, well, what's wrong with that person?
Well, some of both. And this is the kind of thing that my parents had mentored me to understand that might be in my way. And that's partly because they'd never had a black boss. It was just straight up racism.
So that would be upset.
Yeah.
I was
definitely.
wondering if, as the first woman, as the first black woman, have you felt that you ran into a lot of racism in Minnesota?
Oh, yes. And the thing that's so odd about it is that Minnesota tells itself Several myths. I had a man who wrote me race hate mail from every job I was on, hand delivered it to my house, we discovered. So, yes, and on the job, both subtle and overt things. What I wanted to say is, too, is that Minnesota has this mythology about itself, which is that because we're nice,
We're very, very nice.
we're very nice. I'm nice. We don't have these problems, but we do. Yeah.
That is, I think, a myth. I agree, and I think that, yeah, it's almost adds to the problem.
Definitely.
It gives another layer, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And resistance.
And what?
Resistance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not true.
It's not true. No.
Yeah, that's the word mythology is a good word. Do you think because of being first in more ways than one, that it felt stressful for you being Vivian? It
Absolutely.
has.
And because this mail followed me from job to job, it also went to the people around me, like my secretaries, and so it would, the mail would arrive and it would just send everybody just kind of nuts, really.
Yeah.
And wondering what level of danger we were in. And it was so interesting that the outgoing postal police head, who knew that we had postal police, but they got onto it and found him right away.
Wow. Another kind of, almost one of my last questions here, we're almost out of time. Balancing career and work, well, career and personal life, family life,
Yes.
that's not easy,
No.
especially when you're doing so many things. How did you manage that, and what do you tell younger women now who are trying to do it all or making decisions that are not easy?
No. I didn't do it by myself, first of all. I had George until he got Parkinson's. And he had Parkinson's for many years.
So did that make you pretty much pull back your work effort?
No, it meant I got the help we needed and that he needed.
So you found ways to bring in support people?
Yeah. And I found the help I needed, which included counseling. It included help with the house. It included just whatever I needed.
So you, though, had to take the initiative to make that happen, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you were resourceful
Yes.
and figured out ways.
Yeah.
That takes time, though, and energy, too, to search out those places that could help. That's not an easy thing. A lot of people, I think, fall through the cracks because they don't know how to do that kind of almost like detective work to find resources.
Yes. And that's especially true for people who suffer from poverty.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
They're not out getting to interface with agencies. And
right. And so I helped start an organization which does that, called the Neighborhood Hub. And we're in Northside, Minneapolis.
See, that's an example of leadership. There's a problem. Let's come up with a solution, right?
Do so.
So the neighborhood house?
Neighborhood Hub.
Oh, hub.
Hub.
So is that still going?
Yes.
It is. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I got divorced, I thought, I don't have to know how to do everything, but I better figure out how to find people who can do the things I can't do.
And I have to mention Tammy, my friend, and she's helped me do just so many things.
Your right hand
lady,
person.
person. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Well, we are out of time, Vivian. I could pepper you with questions all night, but this has been wonderful.
No, thank you.
If people want to get a hold of you and learn more about any of the organizations you are plugged into and have started, what's the best way?
Well, my email is probably the best way.
Okay.
And it's my initials plus interraceinstitute.org.
So VJN.
at inter, I-N-T-E-R, hyphen Race Institute, one word, .org. So
We'll put that on the
Okay.
screen
All right.
too to make
Thank
it
you.
easier. But yes, I know at the end of my shows, I love to give people a way to connect
Yes,
more
right.
because I'm sure you have kind of piqued interest in
I
all
hope.
kinds of things
I
here.
hope. Yeah,
Thank you
thanks.
so much
Thank you.
for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, same
Great
here.
to work with you and meet
Same
you
here.
finally.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us. I'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.